First Contact and Deception. The command center of the Kelveri warship Inevitable Dominance thrummed with activity, its crystalline displays casting an eerie blue glow across the scaled faces of its crew. Admiral Drex stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, all 3 of his eyes fixed on the holographic projection of a small blue-green planet suspended in the darkness of space. "Another primitive world for the glory of the Dominion," commented Sub-Commander Vex, her voice carrying the distinctive metallic resonance typical of the Kelveri elite. Initial scans suggest minimal resistance capability. Their most advanced weapons are crude nuclear devices and chemical propellants. Drex's facial plates shifted in what lesser species might interpret as a smile, though it contained no warmth, only the cold calculation of a predator assessing easy prey. The Kelveri Dominion had conquered over 200 worlds in the last millennium alone. Their method was as efficient as it was predictable. Identify, evaluate, overwhelm, subjugate. No species had ever presented more than token resistance once the full might of a Kelveri battle fleet arrived in their system. "Prepare the standard first contact protocol," Drex ordered. "A single destroyer should be sufficient for the initial demonstration of force. Target their largest military installation and their planetary leadership center. Once they witness our technological superiority, they will surrender as all others have." The destroyer's swift retribution detached from the main fleet, its quantum engines flaring as it accelerated toward Earth. The vessel was a marvel of Kelveri engineering, a perfect killing machine designed to instill hopelessness in primitive species who still believed they had a chance against the inevitable tide of conquest. Commander Maya Chen stood in the underground command center beneath the Sierra Nevada mountains, her dark eyes fixed on the massive display showing the approaching alien vessel. At 39, she had survived 3 major conflicts on Earth and carried the physical and emotional scars of each. Now she faced something entirely different, an extraterrestrial threat that humanity had theorized about but never truly prepared for. "All tracking systems confirm it's on an approach vector to Washington, D.C., reported Lieutenant James Okonkwo, his fingers dancing across the quantum interface. "Their technology it's like nothing we've ever seen. Energy readings are off the charts." Chen's expression remained impassive, but her mind raced through possibilities with practiced precision. 2 years ago, when the first alien signals had been detected, most of the world's governments had panicked. Some had wanted immediate surrender. Others advocated for a first strike with nuclear weapons. It had taken every ounce of Chen's considerable influence to convince the United Earth Defense Council to try a different approach. "Is the Phoenix Network in position?" she asked, her voice betraying none of the tension coiling inside her. "Yes, Commander. Dr. Reed's systems are fully operational and awaiting your command." Chen allowed herself the slightest of smiles. "Then let's give our visitors a proper Earth welcome." The swift retribution entered Earth's atmosphere with the arrogant confidence of a predator that had never known failure. Its advanced sensors detected the primitive electromagnetic communications of the humans, their radar systems, and nuclear weapons, all laughably inadequate against Kelveri technology. "Weapons locked on primary target," reported the weapons officer. "Washington, D.C. Leadership Complex identified." The destroyer's main cannon began charging, a process that would take 30 seconds before unleashing destruction that would level the human capital city and demonstrate the futility of resistance. What happened next would change the course of Kelveri history forever. The destroyer's sensors suddenly detected hundreds, then thousands of small objects rising from Earth's surface and from hidden orbital positions. Before the Kelveri commander could react, the objects swarmed the vessel, attaching themselves to its hull. "Unidentified devices attaching to outer hull," the sensor officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. "They appear to be primitive, mechanical rather than energy-based." The commander's dismissal of the threat died in his throat as the first device detonated, not with a conventional explosion, but with a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse that targeted the destroyer's shield generators. The second wave of devices activated in perfect synchronization, each one exploiting a different vulnerability in Kelvary design that the humans should have had no knowledge of. Shields failing. Weapon systems offline. The panic in the crew's voices was something never before heard on a Kelvary warship. Hull breach in sections 4 through 7. In the command center beneath the Sierra Nevada, Commander Chen watched the data stream in with grim satisfaction. Dr. Reed's Phoenix devices are performing exactly as designed, she commented. They're adapting to the alien technology and exploiting weaknesses faster than the enemy can compensate. But how? Okonkwo asked, voicing the question that had been on everyone's mind. We've never encountered this species before. How could Reed's systems know their vulnerabilities? Chen's eyes never left the display. Because Nathan Reed is the most brilliant mind humanity has ever produced. He didn't try to predict specific alien technology. He created a system that could analyze, learn, and adapt faster than any conventional defense. The Phoenix drones aren't just weapons. They're an autonomous learning network. On the screen, the Kelvary destroyer began to list in the upper atmosphere, its symmetrical form now marred by multiple breaches and failing systems. No distress call was transmitted. The Kelvary hadn't considered the possibility of needing to request assistance against a primitive species. Prepare boarding teams, Chen ordered. I want that ship captured intact if possible. Every piece of their technology we can salvage gives us an advantage for what comes next. What comes next? Okonkwo asked, though he already knew the answer. Chen's expression hardened. They'll send more ships, many more. And when they do, we need to be ready. Admiral Drex stared at the empty space in the holographic display where the swift retribution should have been. The destroyer's quantum signature had simply vanished, and no communication had been received since it entered Earth's atmosphere. Impossible, he whispered, the word foreign on his tongue. In 5 centuries of military service, Drex had never lost a vessel to a pre-spacefaring species. Launch immediate reconnaissance drones. I want visual confirmation of the destroyer's destruction. When the drone's images reached the command ship, the atmosphere on the bridge shifted from confusion to rage. The swift retribution lay partially dismantled in a massive facility that the humans had apparently constructed in secret. Teams of tiny figures swarmed over the vessel like insects, methodically removing components and transporting them deeper into the facility. There, studying our technology, Sub-Commander Vex observed, her voice hollow with disbelief. They disabled one of our destroyers and are now dissecting it. Drex's facial plates contracted in fury. Prepare the battle fleet. This primitive species requires a lesson in the consequences of defiance. Dr. Nathan Reed's laboratory beneath the Atlantic Ocean was a cacophony of activity as teams of scientists worked frantically to integrate the salvaged alien technology with Earth's defensive systems. At 52, Reed's once dark hair had long since turned gray, but his mind remained the sharpest weapon in humanity's arsenal. The Kelvary propulsion system operates on quantum principles we've only theorized about, he explained to Commander Chen, who had arrived for a personal briefing. But their computational systems are surprisingly vulnerable to certain types of electronic warfare. They had clearly never faced an adversary who could adapt quickly enough to exploit these weaknesses. Chen studied the holographic representation of the alien vessel's systems. How long before you can replicate their shield technology? Reed's expression was grim but determined. That's the problem. We can't replicate it with our current manufacturing capabilities. His eyes lit up with the fire of inspiration. But we don't need to replicate it. We can subvert it. He manipulated the hologram, highlighting specific nodes in the alien shield matrix. The Phoenix network was just the beginning. What I'm proposing now is the quantum swarm defense system. Instead of trying to match their technology conventionally, we deploy millions of microsatellites, each carrying a modified version of the Phoenix Eye. Together, they form a distributed intelligence that can analyze, adapt, and counter Kelvary technology in real time. Chen considered the proposal. How quickly can you deploy this system? The first generation is already in production. We can have basic coverage of Earth's orbital space within 72 hours. Reed hesitated. But Maya, you need to understand. This is a defensive measure. It might buy us time, but it won't win the war. Winning isn't about matching their strength, Chen replied, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had seen too many conflicts. It's about making the cost of victory too high for them to accept. The Kelvari War Council convened in the sacred chambers of the inevitable dominance, a gathering that occurred only when facing a threat worthy of collective consideration. 12 of the Dominion's highest-ranking admirals formed a circle around the central projection field, where images of Earth and its defensive preparations rotated slowly. This species calls themselves humans, Drex informed the Council. Initial assessment categorized them as a standard pre-spacefaring civilization, but their response to our first contact protocol was unprecedented. The eldest admiral, Zarak, leaned forward, his ancient facial plates creased with skepticism. One destroyer lost to primitive trickery does not constitute a threat to the Dominion. Our reconnaissance reveals they have already begun integrating our technology with their own, Drex countered. More concerning is the speed of their adaptation. Analysis of their global communications suggests they had prepared defensive measures specifically designed to counter technologies they had never encountered. Impossible, another admiral dismissed. No species can develop countermeasures without prior exposure. Yet these humans have done exactly that, Drex insisted. Moreover, they seem to lack the fear response that typically facilitates conquest. Instead of panicking at our arrival, they executed a coordinated defense strategy that suggests long-term planning. The projection shifted to show massive human facilities, where production of unusual devices was underway at a frantic pace. Satellite imagery revealed millions of small objects being launched into orbital configurations around their planet. I propose we deploy the full battle fleet, Drex concluded, not just to subjugate this world, but to make an example of it. The humans represent a type of defiance we have not encountered before, one that could spread dangerous ideas to our subject worlds if left unchecked. Zarak considered this, then nodded slowly. Approved. Deploy all available forces. This Earth shall become a testament to the consequences of defying the Kelvari Dominion. The impossible victory. In the 6 weeks following the destruction of the Kelvari destroyer, Earth transformed. Ancient rivalries and conflicts were set aside as humanity united against an existential threat. Military facilities operated around the clock, producing the components for Reed's quantum swarm defense system. Orbital platforms that had once been research stations or commercial satellites were converted into defensive positions. Commander Chen stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her uniform crisp despite having worked for 72 hours straight. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected a massive fleet approaching the solar system, she reported. Based on their trajectory and velocity, they will reach Earth orbit in approximately 10 days. What are our chances? Asked the council chairwoman, her face lined with the weight of responsibility for humanity's survival. Chen didn't sugarcoat her assessment. Conventional military doctrine would say 0. The approaching fleet represents technological superiority and firepower that we cannot match directly. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. However, Chen continued, a fierce determination in her eyes, we are not fighting a conventional war. Dr. Reed's quantum swarm is now fully operational. Our boarding teams recovered enough technology from the destroyed destroyer to give us insights into Kelvari tactical systems. And most importantly, she paused, making eye contact with each council member. We have something the Kelvari have never faced in all their centuries of conquest. And what is that, Commander? The chairwoman asked. Chen's expression hardened, embodying the indomitable will that would soon become legendary throughout the galaxy. The human capacity to defy impossible odds. They believe they know war because they've only faced species who surrendered when defeat seemed inevitable. They're about to discover what happens when they face an enemy who refuses to accept defeat under any circumstances. She activated a holographic display showing Earth surrounded by millions of tiny points of light. The quantum swarm, now the largest distributed intelligence ever created. The Kelveri believe this battle will be routine. Just another primitive species to add to their empire. We're about to show them what real defiance looks like. The vast Kelveri armada emerged from quantum space at the edge of Earth's solar system, a sight meant to extinguish hope in the hearts of the soon-to-be-conquered. Over 200 warships arranged in perfect formation, a testament to millennia of unopposed military dominance. At their center, the colossal dreadnought Dominions will dwarf all other vessels, its planet-killing main cannon capable of rendering Earth's surface uninhabitable with a single discharge. Admiral Drex surveyed the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Begin standard approach vector. Maintain unified formation until we reach the fourth planet's orbit. Then deploy into conquest configuration. The fleet moved with ominous precision, a predator confident in its superiority. Preliminary scans showed human activity throughout their system. Primitive orbital structures, defensive positions around their moon, and curious swarms of small objects that the Kelveri systems classified as debris or primitive satellites. Curious, muttered Sub-Commander Vex, studying the sensor readings. They've made no attempt to hide their defensive preparations, yet their technology remains insufficient to pose any threat. Drex's facial plates shifted in a gesture of dismissal. A psychological tactic, perhaps. Some species display aggression when cornered, even when resistance is futile. As the armada passed the orbit of Mars, the first anomalies appeared in the sensor data. The swarms of small objects began moving in coordinated patterns, forming and reforming complex geometric shapes that defied random distribution. "Admiral," the sensor officer called, confusion evident in his voice. "These objects, they're emitting quantum signatures similar to our own systems." Drex's posture stiffened. Impossible. They couldn't have. His statement was cut short as the first wave of human counterattack began. Thousands of the tiny satellites suddenly accelerated toward the Kelveri fleet, each one targeting specific vulnerabilities that should have been unknown to such a primitive species. Unlike conventional weapons that would have been stopped by Kelveri shields, these devices phased through the defensive barriers using principles reverse-engineered from the captured destroyer. Shields compromised on vessels 7 through 23. The tactical officer reported, panic rising in his voice, unknown devices attaching to hull structures. Drex's mind raced. This was not the resistance of a primitive species. This was a coordinated attack using technology that somehow countered Kelveri advantages. Deploy countermeasures. Target those swarms with wide-spectrum energy pulses. But the human devices had already anticipated this response. As the Kelveri weapons fired, the swarm separated and reformed, evading the energy blasts with an agility that seemed impossible for mechanical devices. In the command center beneath the Sierra Nevada, Commander Chen watched the battle unfold with intense focus. Phase 1 successful, she reported to the Defense Council. The quantum swarm has penetrated their outer defenses. "What about their main weapon?" the chairwoman asked. "The dreadnought." "Dr. Reed is handling that personally," Chen replied, allowing herself a small smile. Deep beneath the Atlantic, Nathan Reed sat surrounded by holographic displays, his fingers dancing across virtual interfaces as he directed a specialized contingent of the quantum swarm. Unlike the main attack force, this smaller group had a single target, the massive dreadnought at the fleet's center. Quantum signatures matched, Reed muttered to himself, initiating phase harmonization. On the bridge of the Dominion's will, alarms blared as systems began failing in cascading sequence. The main cannon, which had been charging for an apocalyptic strike against Earth, suddenly powered down as its quantum core entered an unexpected harmonic state. "What's happening?" Drex demanded, his voice rising as he watched his invincible fleet being systematically disabled by an enemy that should have been cowering in fear. "They've somehow synchronized with our quantum systems," the chief engineer reported, disbelief evident in his voice. They're not destroying our technology, they're controlling it. The revelation struck Drex like a physical blow. In all the Kelveri's long history of conquest, they had never encountered a species that could not only resist their technology, but subvert it. The humans hadn't built better weapons, they had turned the Kelveri's own weapons against them. "Admiral," Vex called, her voice trembling, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." The holographic display shifted to show Commander Chen, standing tall and unafraid. "This is Commander Maya Chen of the United Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet has been neutralized. Your weapons no longer respond to your commands. You have a choice: retreat or be destroyed by your own technology." Drex's facial plates flushed with rage. "You think this victory means anything human? We are the Kelveri Dominion. We command thousands of worlds. We will return with a fleet 10 times this size." Chen's expression remained impassive. "No, Admiral, you won't. Because right now, we're transmitting the specifications of our quantum swarm to every world in your dominion. The technology that defeated you today will spread faster than your ships can travel. By the time you return to your homeworld, you'll find a galaxy that no longer fears the Kelveri." In that moment, Drex understood the true nature of the defeat. It wasn't just a military loss. It was the end of an era. The Kelveri had ruled through fear and technological superiority, but the humans had shattered both pillars in a single stroke. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice barely audible. Full withdrawal from the system. As the crippled Kelveri fleet limped away from Earth, cheers erupted in command centers across the planet. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged not just surviving, but victorious. In the aftermath, Earth took its place among the stars, not as a conquered world, but as a force to be respected. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had proven that determination and adaptability were weapons more powerful than any quantum cannon. Dr. Reed's technology spread throughout the galaxy, liberating world after world from Kelveri dominion. The massive empire that had stood for millennia crumbled in less than a decade, replaced by a coalition of free worlds, with Earth as a founding member. Commander Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood on the observation deck of Earth's first true interstellar vessel, watching the stars streak by as they traveled to meet with representatives of the newly formed Galactic Council. "Do you think they understand yet?" asked Reed, now her chief scientific advisor. "The Kelveri, I mean. Do you think they understand what they really encountered when they found Earth?" Chen considered the question. "I doubt it. They've spent too long thinking in terms of technology and firepower. They still don't understand that our greatest weapon was never the quantum swarm. It was our refusal to accept defeat," Reed finished. Chen nodded, looking out at the vast galaxy that had once seemed so threatening, but now awaited human exploration. They underestimated Earth, and now they're watching their empire burn.